A few weeks ago, I made a video talking about how Bandai Namco was making me sad. I was talking about the Dragon Ball Super card game in that video, and unfortunately that trend has somewhat continued, but we'll talk about that on another day. In that video, I also mentioned that they were working on a game that I was beyond hyped to play, and that game was Tekken 8. I've been teeming with excitement from the moment I first saw the reveal trailer for this game, and that excitement only grew every time they showed off a new character. So when I saw there was a closed beta test coming up, I just knew I had to check it out. If I'm honest though, I never really expected to get in. In my mind, there were hundreds and thousands of way more qualified content creators and FGC members that were on the front line to get into the beta. So first, I want to say thank you so much to Bandai Namco for choosing me to participate. Tekken was a huge part of my childhood. My dad, my godfather, and I used to spend hours passing the controller back and forth to see who could come out on top as the king of Iron Fist. And I've played every single Tekken since the very first game. I love this series. But I must also confess that I am a blue rank scrub. For those who know what that means, I am deeply ashamed. But for those who don't, it means I'm a god at the game and you should worship me. Anyway, jokes aside, I bring that up because I'm not going to be talking much about the frame data or which characters are objectively better or worse in this game. Instead, I want to focus on the casual player experience and talk about how this game is different from Tekken 7. Has the game improved overall, and in what way? The first thing I want to talk about is the aspect of the game that caught my attention from the very first announcement trailer, and that is the graphics. I feel like I've been saying this about almost every new game that releases lately, but Tekken 8 looks so good. As a nerd for this kind of thing, I played around with the Unreal Engine 5 demo when it came out, but seeing Tekken 8 side by side with Tekken 7 really highlights the massive jump that occurred with this new engine. The particle effects and lighting are incredible, and every blow just has a weight to it that makes you feel powerful when landing hits on your opponent. Not to mention the characters themselves. Just look at my boy Kazuya here. The game is beautiful and a clear step up from Tekken 7, but the improvements are more than just skin deep. The next big change I want to talk about for Tekken 8 is the netcode. Gone are the days of vague statements like, the rollback is 3. Now, Tekken has a full network display that shows you the ping, the input delay, the rollback, and the connection status of both players. While some people may not care about these details, it goes a long way to show that Bandai Namco does care about the connectivity of matches and wants to make sure that at all times if you're having an issue with your connection, you can pinpoint the problem. I think a lot of pro players and even just fighting game enthusiasts are going to be really happy with this display and the changes that they've made to the netcode. But what may be more important for casual players is that the game's loading process has been dramatically improved from Tekken 7. Just look at this.
Get ready for the next battle.
To some people, this might be very unimpressive, but coming from Tekken 7, the speed going from the match being made to actually entering the fight now feels lightning fast. And even better, once the match is over, you just go straight back into the fight. Again, this sounds unimportant, but it's a huge improvement over Tekken 7 where you had a loading screen between literally every interaction with your opponent. And from a viewer experience, it meant that when you were watching tournaments for Tekken 7, there was a lot of downtime just waiting for the game to load. So for me personally, this is going to encourage me to spend a lot more time playing Tekken when the game fully releases. One of the biggest reasons I didn't play Tekken more often and remained in blue ranks is because as an Xbox player, the available player base wasn't that large. So the wait between matches was already pretty long, but then each match took forever to load in. And since most players seem to leave immediately after one match, it meant most of my time playing Tekken 7 was spent staring at loading screens. And as much as I love Tekken, I didn't find that fun when I could just as easily boot up Injustice 2 or even Melty Blood and spend more time actually fighting opponents so I could get better. Tekken 8 completely solves this problem not only with better netcode and loading times, but also by adding crossplay between consoles and PC. I was a bit nervous about this at first, because in some games, the frame rate difference between console and PC can have a meaningful impact on performance during crossplay. But even after spending quite a bit of time in the network tests fighting PC players, I never felt like I was at a disadvantage in those matches. So I think this feature is mostly just going to serve to increase the number of people available to play with. And now that we're on the subject of matches, I suppose I should talk about the actual fighting mechanics. Now the fights themselves were admittedly a challenge for me, not only because of the fact that I'm a blue rank scrub, but also because for the past few years, I've only been playing Yoshimitsu and Noctis, neither of whom made it into the network test. So I spent a lot of time not knowing what I was doing and getting destroyed online while I tried to remember what my old mains like Xiao Yu and Brian actually do. It was frustrating at first, but it gave me a reason to try out one of Tekken 8's new features in the special style. Special Style is similar to something like the modern controls in Street Fighter 6, although I'd argue it's a bit more restrictive and risky to use here. It might even be more accurate to describe it as something similar to the auto combo system from Dragon Ball FighterZ, and I'll explain a little bit more about why later. But for now, the basics. This simplified input format gives you easy access to the game's tools by giving you one button for specialty moves, which usually leads into heat mode, again more on that later, one button for air combos, a button for your power crush, which is a move that has armor, a button for low attacks, and a single button for some of the game's newer mechanics. At a first glance, you might think this looks like an easy mode for the game, but I don't think it's that simple. While it is true that the special style is easily accessible through a single button press, the one button options all lead to a singular string or action that, in my experience, was always the same. This means that if you're only using special style, a good opponent will be able to read you and respond to what you're doing. And if that weren't enough, when you're using special style, there are voice lines for each move, and the chosen move will also flash on the opponent's display. At the low level of play, this might not be a very big deal, but against higher level players, I can see this leading to a lot of frustration because it'll feel like your opponent is able to basically read your mind. This probably won't be as much of an issue in the main game because there will be more players online and you won't have to match up with higher ranked players like I did, but I still think it's worth noting. Also, just on a personal level, I'm not the biggest fan of the special style in terms of feel. While for some people it might be nice to have everything on one button, there's just something weird to me about pressing the same button over and over to do something in Tekken. And I'm sure that might sound a little bit weird seeing as how I mentioned before that I played Noctis in Tekken 7, but when you're playing Noctis, you have different routes that you can go within those strings versus when you're using the special style, it feels like there's always just one thing that happens when you press those buttons. And to me, it's just not very satisfying. All this to say, while I do think that the special style is a good tool for casual play, and it will help people who have never played Tekken before to at least be able to do something in their fights, I don't think it's going to be useful as the sole way to play Tekken. At least not for me. With that said though, since special style is available through a single button press, I also wouldn't be surprised if high level players use it as an extra tool similar to how auto combos are used in Dragon Ball FighterZ. Which brings us back to that heat mode thing I mentioned. Not to be confused with Rage, Heat is a new feature that's been added to Tekken 8. Each player has access to one heat activation per round. Once active, the player will effectively receive extra benefits for playing aggressive. In this state, you do higher chip damage. You also gain access to a heat dash to make closing the gap and connecting combos easier. And then there's a heat smash, which is a powerful attack that uses all of your remaining heat at once. I'm still figuring out the best way to make use of this mechanic myself, but so far it feels like a rage drive with an added bonus. You can enter heat by using a heat engager with the R1 or RB button. This attack can be used to start a combo if you land it, but I believe it's also plus on block, so even if it's guarded, you maintain your advantage. And if you stay aggressive after you activate heat, you can actually keep the mode going for quite some time. However, if you activate it and then play passively, you'll find that the meter drains pretty quickly. Playing 2 passively also has the drawback that the chip damage dealt during heat is actually recoverable. So as obvious as this might seem, you should do your best to keep the advantage once you enter heat and try to use it to close out the fight. On the less technical side of things, entering heat also gives each character access to more moves. For example, Claudio gets access to a fireball. At the low level of play, this can be absolutely degenerate. Akuma fans rejoice. Moving on to the next mechanic, the Rage system has returned in Tekken 8 mostly the way you remember it. When your health is low, you do increased damage and gain access to your Rage Art, Tekken's version of super moves. This mode feels mostly the same to me, minus the fact that you no longer have access to a Rage Drive. But some fans will be happy to know when it comes to the Rage Arts that while these moves are still visually impressive and deal high damage, the actual length of the Rage Arts seems to have been shortened a bit. This to me is a good thing because when you're playing the game a lot, the Rage Arts become less a cool spectacle and more just an annoying unskippable cutscene that you've seen way too many times already. And with that, I've covered just about everything I got to experience in the beta. Overall, I think these new additions and changes are effective at making this feel distinct from Tekken 7 while also feeling true to the roots of the series. And playing the beta made me really excited to get my hands on the full game. The one thing that does remain to be seen though is how well this game will do when it comes to attracting and maintaining new players. As popular as Tekken is, the legacy of the game can sometimes be a factor that pushes new players away. With such a long history and so many characters that have massive move lists, it can be overwhelming for someone brand new to the game to jump in and deal with all of their opponent's options. Based on the post-beta survey, this is the aim of the new special style. to simplify the game and allow new players to have shining moments. But it remains to be seen how successful this strategy will be. Like I said, for me personally, it doesn't feel that satisfying to play, but who knows, maybe brand new players won't be bothered by this at all. And with the rising hype that's come with other releases like Street Fighter 6, I want to believe that this can be another launching off point that can propel Tekken to new heights in the same way that Tekken 7 did. Especially if Tekken 8 launches with modes outside of the typical ranked arcade and survival mode. Hashtag bring back Tekken Ball mode. Either way, I am extremely hyped for this game and can't wait to finally be able to play Yoshimitsu in the final release. But what about you? Who are you most looking forward to playing in Tekken 8? Let me know in the comments below. Also be sure to like and subscribe if you enjoyed the video, and I will see you in the next one. Thanks for watching.